Neil Diamond, Home Before Dark. Notes After Dark. After all these years recording all these songs, all these albums, it would be fair to assume that I'd become accustomed to the process, that I'd have honed or even mastered the methods required, so much so that by now I should be able to churn out songs in my sleep. Certainly, practicing these familiar steps as often as I have, it seems like there should be an ease or versatility acquired along the way. Shouldn't I, at this stage of my life, have mastered my craft? Shouldn't I have reached a place where I can enjoy the fruits of my labor and be sated with accomplishments? In fact, for me, the opposite is true. Somehow, each album means as much as my very first record, if not more, and the experience of creation has yet become easy. In truth, I'm as hungry as I ever was. The emptiness deep inside me aches even more. Making music is my life, the one constant I can't live without. It's more than a desire or yearning, it's a necessity. The songs come straight from my heart like they've always been there, yet nothing about the process is simple or straightforward. This new record was no exception. The 14 months spent furiously writing and then recording this album included some of the highest points of my life so far, and some of the lowest too. The compulsion to create overwhelms from the moment you take that leap. It's irresistible and terrifying. The undertaking consumes your mind, body, and spirit. The sheer terror of committing to write a complete album of songs, both music and lyrics, filled most of my waking hours 7 days a week. It was the kind of immersion that separated me from the rest of the world as I embarked on my own personal journey, alone inside my head. For all practical purposes, I appeared to be present in all the places I could usually be found, but at the same time, not really there at all. It was like diving into the deep end at a pool party. Underwater, you can hear the sound of voices and revelry around you, but it's distorted. You're alone. You're in your own womb-like world. All you can hear clearly is whatever is going on in your mind and the pounding of your own heart. You're removed from what's going on around you. You're holding your breath, and your mind is preoccupied in a primal way with the fear of drowning. I am feared with the fear of failure, the fear of not coming up with the goods. Alone in my little world, feeling like a rookie songwriter yearning to be heard again, as the familiar angst begins to build, I have to detach and succumb, let the process envelop me to survive. The real world of family, friends, news, TV, movies, baseball, books, and most of all, other people's music was tuned out. This isolation caused a deep uneasiness, which I carried around with me every day that I spent writing this album. I could only find relief when I was working on a song that truly absorbed me, so that became my first goal. First, I find ideas, musical, lyrical, or conceptual, that thrill me with their possibilities, thus distracting me from my inner fears, and dive into them head first. The genesis of an album becomes a collection of little bursts and deaths. I live and die a little with each song. The deaths often arise from my own difference, ideas that don't gel, chords that jar, melodies that stray. The bursts are the magic, the impetus that releases the song from me and brings the idea to life. I am addicted to them. These little bursts fulfill me by offering the fuel to the fire, the inspirations that rock me, the way to say what I need. They are the thunderclaps, the aha moments, the thing that keeps me going. It seemed like the whole rest of my life was put aside as I went in pursuit of those bursts. I never knew when or where they will come. I assumed the role of observer instead of participator, and life goes on around me. Everyday interactions are transformed into a source of possibilities, a provider of the keys that could capture my imagination. A friend commented that I was lucky to have had another bite of the apple of my love life, another chance of getting it right. Her remark immediately lit up my mind and went into my thrill file as a song to be written about second chances, with a delicious title. A note I wrote to myself one night about getting my girl Ray home before dark after a trip caught my eye the next day while I was shaving. Get her home before dark. Aha! Simple words gave birth to a song that became the title track for this record, written in a matter of days. It was the missing piece to the puzzle, and the last song written for this album. I approached it as a kind of anchor to all the songs that preceded it, and ended up using chords and harmonic structures I never used before to achieve the way necessary. It's a fairly unlikely journey for a reminder note to take, but I've had stranger beginnings for songs over the years. Trying to keep my ears and eyes, mind, and heart open to the possibilities, the little birth that give life to the songs, over a period of months, concepts began to accumulate. Then there was always my favorite writing guitar calling out to me with its deafening silence. Hold me, play me, seduce music from me. I have everything you need. Touch me in ways that make me give what you want. That guitar in my hands could inspire a tune or a picking figure or even a series of chords which could grow into a fully realized melody, and from there I might find a lyric to express the emotional content of that melody. It was from these little bursts that this album grew to find its emotional center, which is and has always been my own life. 10 months into the writing process, I was driven out of my solitary mindset by a need to play these new songs for someone else. After all, they were not written for me alone, but to be shared. First my lover, then my producer, Rick Rubin, and finally the session musicians. From the darkness of solitary confinement into the world of the recording studio introduces a different kind of isolation with a new fear thrown in. What if they weren't any good, and the musicians who were about to hear these new songs for the first time were unmoved by my efforts? This assortment of little bursts had become my babies, offspring that I now had to entrust to others. The emotional butterflies begin. Up until now, I only had to concern myself with one tough critic, me. Now that I had a bunch of sophisticated music professionals that I respect and admire to appraise the results of my labor, I felt exposed and vulnerable. Despite my trepidation, I wanted their opinions. I needed to be released from my solitude, and so did the songs. Though the band were usually gentle with their comments, knowing firsthand the sting of criticism, they would get their points across nonetheless. Sometimes they'd tell me with a passing comment, and sometimes they'd tell me by saying nothing at all. Other than myself, these musicians were the toughest critics my work would face because I was asking them to give their time and talent to help me fully realize my own musical imaginings. It was not just, do you like them? But do you like them enough to spend weeks and months in the studio trying to make them come alive on a record? I was inviting them to join me on my journey, and that meant asking for the same self-sacrifice and detachment that I required of myself. It's a lot to ask of someone, and it's nervous making in a big way. Fortunately, these newborn songs began to inspire the group in a way we were swept, intoxicated with the possibility of creating something beautiful on the wings of a song. The actual work of transforming the bare emotional statement of those songs into living, breathing records was yet to begin, but at least I was no longer alone in my quest. Having the love and support of these amazingly talented people and collaborating with them to breathe life into these new musical babies was what I craved. It is one of the most magnificent feelings you can experience throughout the record-making process. Music charts were not provided at these recording sessions, just my pages of lyrics and chords. Other than that, the musicians would have to improvise their parts. With the band set up in the studio and the engineers and producer in the control room, I would run through each new song alone first, hoping that something they heard in the song would move them enough that by the second run-through, they might begin playing along with me. As it turned out, they would frequently join in before my first run-through was finished, which at first annoyed me until I came to realize that they were doing so out of enthusiasm for the song. Run-through followed run-through as keys, forms, tempos, parts, grooves, and licks began to take shape and become one with the song's mood and intent. Rick would occasionally visit us out in the studio, having a quiet word with one of the musicians or whisper something to me like, "In the Buddhist religion, the power of two people praying together is infinite." Then he'd pad barefoot back into the dark of the control room, where he'd lie down on the couch behind the engineers and go trance-like again into the music, leaving me to figure out what the hell he was talking about, since the song I was working on was already about the power of two, not in prayer but in love, and there was a goddamn Buddhist inside to ask what he meant. The whole process was exhausting and exhilarating at the same time, but you can now listen to the results at your leisure and hopefully your pleasure. As for me, I came out of it with 12 beautifully crafted recordings and a new nickname, courtesy of guitarist Mike Campbell, who dubbed me the Basher for my no-holds-barred guitar playing technique. I took it in the best way possible, my enthusiastic self expressed through my being on that old Martin guitar I used faithfully for every song. I finally had a nickname I could wear proudly. Thenceforth, I was the unabashed basher, the passionate over-the-top player who felt truly accepted by these talented musicians as one of them. I was breathless and thrilled by the journeys and big thanks to my fellow travelers for helping me get these songs off my chest and onto the record where they can be shared by all. All of these people working together in harmony brought this album to life and liberated me. Mike Campbell, thank you for prompting me to start each track with my guitar. It did wonders for my self-confidence. Smokey Hormel, thanks for keeping it loose, giving us perfect count-offs, and for the rocking bass guitar lines. Ben Tench, my thanks for sharing your prodigious talents at the keyboards. I meant my kiss after your tour de force piano improvised for another day as much as any kiss I've given in my life. Matt Sweeney, you made the A-team in spades. You will always be known to me as the man who saved Forgotten from certain death with that spectacular guitar lick you created for the track. Andrew Sheps, as first engineer, you embodied the word virtuoso to me, and Philip Broussard, you proved a worthy second in all the goings-on in that control room. Rick, thank you for putting this whole ensemble together and directing it with such a loving touch. I was fortunate to have Natalie Main's duet with me on another day. Natalie is much more than just a pretty voice. She is an adventurous and spontaneous woman who trusted me to take her where I felt she needed to go with that song. What a pleasure just the two of us out there simply singing our hearts out was. It's the essence of what we could do, and is so often forgotten in the clutter of a busy career. Thank you also to the musicians and singers who dropped by to help out with the sweetening and to arrange David Campbell for adding his tasteful orchestrations. I would be remiss in neglecting to thank some important behind-the-scenes contributors to this record. My heartfelt thanks to my family and loved ones for the lifeline of their unwavering love, support, and understanding. Those close to me are and will always be my most precious sources of inspiration. To the team that staffs the fort while I'm on my travels, you always have my gratitude. Lastly, my profound appreciation and admiration to my friend Jessie for taking the beautiful pictures that would help us tell the story behind the songs and make this album package a visual delight. Next come the ultimate test, the public's reaction to these songs. I love each one of them for the way they moved me, and I can only hope that they will touch some of you too. I'm filled with the joyful anticipation of playing this music live in concert and sharing them with audiences around the world until the agony and the ecstasy of songwriting lures me back to the studio again. Right now, I'm relieved to shed the introspective, isolated person I've been for the past year and eager to take on my other identity. Extroverted, fun-loving, and open to life. I'm ready to float to the surface of that pool. Let the games begin. ND, aka The Basher, March 10th, 2008.